All right, fellas, so we're starting a new campaign on Sunday. Figured I'd throw up a little guide for y'all. I'm going to put it on YouTube so you can access it whenever you want. And then I'll probably put a raw file up on our Discord. If you're someone who happened to randomly find this on YouTube, I'm going through all the core mechanics and everything, so it should still be useful to you. But if I'm mentioning Redralum or another campaign, I'm talking about our stuff. So this is the base map we'll be running off of. You guys start over here. The way I described it to my wife, because she's also a nerd, is like if the last alliance of men and elves from Lord of the Rings failed. If they went, they attacked Sauron, Isildur didn't get the ring, whatever. And then Sauron sent his top lieutenants and most of the rest of his army to chase down the survivors of that war. And they're trying to get back to, say, Helm's Deep to make their final defense against them. So for us, that's Skydagger Keep off here in the east, and we're starting off here in the west. So if you're that familiar with Lord of the Rings, you'll have to flip the map in your mind. But yeah, each of these different places have sets of missions that you're going to get to go to. There's 3 different routes you can take. They all kind of have their benefits and detractions. There's straight through, the evil forest, obviously. There's down to the south where there's some settlements, which makes it easier to get supplies and reinforcements and things like that. But sometimes people are the worst monsters you face. And then there's the longest route up through the north that takes you through this mountain pass, but there's like a special temple up here that gives you some bonuses and boosts. So none of them are bad routes. They all have the same number of locations you go through, and we can go through that a little bit when we play, with the exception of this having one more location and being slightly longer. But let's go through the core mechanics first a little bit here. If you've played any Forged in the Dark system, like Blades in the Dark or something, this should all look very familiar to you. If not, basically you've got 3 health bars. One is your stress. You can accumulate trauma. If your trauma is full, that character is done. They trauma out, they die, something like that. As you can see, this is a rookie. This is your base level squad mate. They only get 1 trauma, so they will trauma out very easily. And then I can zero that out here. Not sure how to, there we go. Get rid of the trauma. Corruption is you taking on kind of like all the nastiness that turns the undead into the undead. So as you start getting that all up, you eventually fill that and the character becomes a zombie. I would not describe the units, the rookies, the specialists, the soldiers, as your character. I think your character is the role you play within the Legion. We'll get to those in a minute. So as these guys die, it's not like you lose your special personal character or anything like that. The other is harm. These are there's level 1, level 2, level 3 harm. These are things like, you're drained after a combat, you went all out somewhere, you failed some rolls, and that character is now exhausted and worn out. Level 2 would be more like taking some kind of a burn. Level 3 is more of like some crushed ribs, something like that. Each of these has a detraction if you fill it up. So notice there's only 1 level 3 harm. So that's instantly filled and you need help. Now you either have to push yourself or get assistance from another character or something to take your actions. Level 2, you get 1 less dice to roll. And then level 1s, you just have a reduced effect. So what does all that mean? We'll pop in here and pretend we're doing a maneuver roll. The Foundry virtual tabletop system is very, very well fleshed out on this. So all these roll options down here are just things from the rule book. So don't worry too much about feeling like you got to read that every single time. These are just reminders. The main thing for your rolls are your position, your effect, and then the amount of dice you're rolling. So position is kind of like, if this goes bad, how bad does it go? Am I in a controlled position? Am I up on a rooftop with some camouflage netting shooting a sniper shot? Well, if it goes bad, it's only going to be able to go so bad. It's not like they can turn on you and immediately hurt you. You're shooting from far away, things like that. Risky is your default. Fighting things, going up against undead is inherently risky, and you're going to have some kind of medium-sized negative effects. And this includes, what level of harm you're taking. So if you're running up to, 3 or 4 undead, that's pretty risky. If you fail your roll, you might take a level 2 harm or something like that if you fail that combat roll, if there's nobody backing you up and you have no equipment or anything like that. And desperate is pretty much what it sounds like. This is a roll made out of desperation. It's scarier. There's bigger consequences, things like that. So the consequence you suffer from that might be larger. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean your character is getting hurt. That could be ticks and a clock. Maybe there you guys are trying to outmaneuver another group of undead in the city or something. So we're going to tick, 1 level for controlled, 2 levels for risky, 3 levels for desperate. So don't think that making a desperate roll is always a bad idea because it could, get your character severely injured. There are other consequences. Also, a side note, every time you make a desperate roll, so this one's maneuver, we find that in our prowess skill tree, you get a piece of XP. So making desperate rolls are really beneficial for advancing your character. Effect is how much effect your particular attack is going to have. So if there's an army of 100 people and you're firing a rifle into it, you're going to have pretty much 0 effect. Yeah, you're going to hit some people. Yeah, it's going to hurt them. But the scale of the enemy you're fighting is so large, your effect is going to be, really, really small. Limited, slightly more than 0. Standard is standard effect, so on and so forth. One of the things that can go wrong from a failed roll can be reduced effect. That's what they're talking about here. So say you've got a group of 8 zombies that are coming at you and you're going to throw a grenade in it and you think you can kill 5 of them. That's a pretty great effect, but you roll a 4 or a 5, which we'll get to in just a second, and that's a success with a complication. That complication can just be, oh, well, instead of killing the 5 you expected to kill, your effect is reduced to standard and you kill 2 or 3 of them. So that's another way some of those like failures can come into play. But your standard rolls are pretty much going to be risky, position, standard, effect. So position, just to recap, is kind of how bad things can go if you fail. Effect is how good things can go if you succeed. And then it comes down to your dice. Now, Foundry does a lot of this for you. So our base dice for this roll is 2. You can see we got 2 ticks in the maneuver setting here. So we get 2 dice. Bonus dice from abilities. This is a rookie. They don't have any. And then modifiers. So am I getting help from another person? Am I using a piece of equipment that's going to give me another dice? Do I have both my level 2 harms filled up so I get 1 less dice? So say we have both of those things and the harm, we would get a total of an extra dice. It gives us our total here. And it kind of reminds you of what all this is. Remember to adjust for appropriate harm. If you're getting an asset, add a dice. If you're pushing yourself, you can take a dice. If you've accepted a devil's bargain, which Forged in the Dark is where I took that system from for our game, you get an extra dice, but you can't push yourself. So these two you can't combo up. You can push yourself twice because you can push yourself for greater effect or you can push yourself for an additional dice. You can do both of those, but you can't also take a devil's bargain if you're pushing yourself. Group actions are a little different. Setup actions are a little different. We'll get to those in a minute. But then we roll, and you roll a pool of D6s. Now, hey, this is a critical success. So a 6 is a full success. If you roll a 6, it goes your way. No problems, no complications. If you get 2 6s, you get increased effect and maybe a little something bonus. If you get a 4 or a 5, that's a success with a complication. That complication might be reduced effect, or it might be taking a lesser injury, or it might, some things like that, ticking a clock, some different things that can happen. So that just kind of keeps the tension rising for that mission. If you roll a 1, 2, or a 3, that is then a failure and you don't succeed, but maybe you do, because the way this system works is you keep the fiction moving forward. So maybe you go to attack a zombie, push him off the roof. Maybe you do push him off the roof, but maybe you fall off the roof too. Some things like that. So we can play around a little bit with what a failure actually means. But that's pretty much how it goes. So basically rolling 1 dice, you've got a 50-50 shot at succeeding. A 1, 2, and 3 is a failure. A 4, 5, 6 is a success. 6 being full success, 2 6s being a critical success. So how do we get more points in this? Well, this is our base level rookie that I just pulled up. He's a member of the Ember Wolves. We'll give him a name. He's going to be Rookie Leroy Jenkins. And when we make a new rookie or any character, say you guys recruit a specialist, something like that, you put extra stats in for them. So we get 4. So maybe I want him to have a couple in rigging because I want somebody who's going to set up traps. And so what's rigging? We hover over it. When you rig, you alter how an existing mechanism works or create a new one. So I'm going to set up a trap over a door, or I'm going to disable this siege weapon, or I'm going to, modify this thing. So I'm going to give him a couple points in rig. I want him to be a better fighter, so I add another point in skirmish. And later I want to turn him into some particular specialist. And for that, we have to have the upgraded skills for it. So I'm going to tack a point in discipline because we'll be doing that later. So I've added my 4. this is now what a full rookie is going to look like. Rookies also get a free ability at the beginning. The benefit of starting with a rookie and upgrading them into a full character is they get to keep their rookie ability for free. Every character has a maximum of 6 abilities. These rookie abilities you can only get as a rookie, and you get to keep them and graduate them up into the upper classes for free. Not a rookie anymore is you progressing to becoming a soldier, so we can't take that to start. And if you want to know what they are, we just hover over that. So got to make it out alive. You can take 1 additional trauma before dying. When you promote, you replace this with a level of the survivor ability, which is basically you can take more stress before getting a trauma. This ability cannot be taken as a veteran in advance. So that's one of those things where you can't dip back into this and get rookie abilities as a soldier or as a specialist or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and give him this one. And you can see it automatically applied it to the sheet, automatically threw in another trauma. We don't have to track that. So playbook XP is your ability to get more abilities. So when we fill this up as a rookie, we automatically have to take not a rookie anymore as our advancement. And then we would take this and convert it into a soldier sheet. We're not going to do that just yet. So how do we get XP? One is by making desperate level rolls. Like I said, if we made that desperate level maneuver roll, win, lose, draw, otherwise doesn't matter. You don't have to succeed. You get an XP point just for making a desperate roll. If we hover over playbook XP, it tells us some of the other ways. At the end of each session, it means each mission, but they recommend 1 mission per session. For each item below, mark an XP in the XP tracker. Did you survive the mission? If you're alive, you learned something. If you helped your squad by staying out of the way or surviving despite the odds. This is special for a rookie. So everyone gets kind of like, if you fulfill your role, you get an XP. So was there a time where you were going to be more help or more harm than good, so you stayed out of the way? Or did you do something kind of desperate, and as a rookie, you managed to do it, you get a playbook XP, and if you used your heritage trait. Now, what's your heritage trait? Well, that's the last part of creating a character. So we've got our class, they're in a squad. This one happens to be in the Emberwolf squad. And then we get a heritage. So these are 4 different human heritages for the setting. I'm probably not going to port these directly over into our campaign, but maybe we'll do something with them. So I'm just going to select one at random here. But again, you can hover over them and they tell you a little bit more about what they do. And then you get a trait from that. So each heritage has a different set of 4 traits. So the artisan trait, my rig can advance to 4. So let's say I take the artisan trait. I now have the ability to take rig up to 4 on this character, which you usually would not be allowed to do. So I can become really good at rigging, at making traps, at disabling things, fixing things, all that kind of stuff. And there's 4 different ones. So we'll just go through this one. For marked, when you resist corruption, take an extra 2 dice. That's how we resist some of those bad effects. We'll go into that in just a moment. Shrewd, when you resist with insight, you get an extra dice. Traveler, if you're in normal load, you're considered fast and quiet, which basically means you can take kind of an extra level of load and still be stealthy. So those are some of the kinds of things we got going on there. We'll leave them as an artisan for that rig. So we came across a couple other things there, like load and resistance rolls. A resistance roll is basically when you just tell me, no, that's not what we're doing here. So I say, you take a warhammer to the chest. It was a desperate position against a superior enemy. So he smashes into your rib cage and you're like, no, I would very much like to have my ribs intact. So you're going to say, I would like to resist that. You automatically do. So we're going to get rid of crushed ribs. It automatically goes down 1 level. So if it's a level 1 harm, it goes down to nothing. 2 goes down to 1, 3 goes down to 2. If it was something like stress or corruption or advancing a clock, like a chase clock, we'll reduce the amount that progressed. So in this case, we'll move that level 3 harm down to, I don't know, we'll just call it a generic internal injury. So we filled up our 2s and we get 1 less dice, but we don't need help for everything we're trying to do. So resistance is specific to a tree. Physical resistance is prowess. And so we hover over here. It says use insight to avoid or reduce I don't know why it says insight. That should say prowess, but hey, there you go. To avoid or reduce a consequence from physical strain or injury. Insight, you avoid or reduce a consequence from deception or understanding. So kind of a mental thing. Resolve, to reduce a consequence from actual mental strain. So like one of the higher level undead using something like a spell or a magical ability on you, ghost possessing you, something like that, or willpower to reduce the effects of corruption. So if you're ever wondering how you would use it, you can just hover over these. So this one is a physical injury, so we're going to roll prowess, and we click on it and it gives us our resistance roll here. So we get a base level of 2. Why do we get a base level of 2? Because we have 2 abilities here. Maneuver and skirmish both have a box ticked in them. You don't get extra for the extra boxes ticked, but for every ability you have in that tree, you get 1 dice when you're rolling resistances. Remember to adjust for all appropriate harm. You don't have your second level 2 harm here, so I'd say you don't lose a dice. Take 6 minus the highest dice roll as stress. So that's your trade-off when you resist. You take stress instead of injury. And then it reminds you here, prowess is consequences from physical strain or injury, which this is, and then tells you resolve, like maybe this was a mental ability. Keep in mind, this might be a resolve roll. So I'm going to roll my 2 dice, and I get a 3 and a 1. So instead of taking 6 stress for the resistance, I take 3 because it's 6 minus 3. And that's how a resistance roll works. It always is successful. It always reduces the injury. And you take 6 stress minus your highest dice roll for the resistance. So if you roll a 6, you get a resist for free. It just goes away. And that's kind of how that works there. So to recap just a little bit here, this artisan trait, raising rig, we were talking about if you used a heritage trait, you get playbook XP. So if I did a rigging action, essentially, I would get a free XP for that. Now, do we have to put that in playbook XP? No, we do not. So this is giving me 3 different ways to earn XP. There's some other ones, again, like a desperate roll and some different things there, but you ultimately can put that wherever you want. So if I wanted to upgrade prowess, I could put all 3 into prowess and be upgrading that. So it's up to you how you do that. These zeros here are just to zero that out. So if you get to 6, you mark your next level. I want shoot, and then I can zero that out. Same with playbook. We max it out. We go down. So let's say we get this guy maxed out playbook XP. Rookies can't take an extra ability. They have to upgrade to a soldier. So we're going to go here. We're going to get rid of this, and we're going to say this rookie has officially become a soldier. It keeps our existing stuff. We upgrade, we zero out the playbook XP, but now we have this grit action here that we didn't have before. Grit is specific to soldiers. If you ever take a soldier and push them into a specialist, they will no longer have grit. So there is some wisdom sometimes to keeping people as career soldiers. Again, you max out at 6 abilities. So we have got to make it out alive here. If we recall, that turns into hardened. So we're going to take a free level of hardened. We're going to get rid of that. So soldiers can take 2 trauma, but now you can see where I used to have 6 stress. I now have a cap of 8 stress. This is a resource for you to spend. As you saw, you spend it on resistance. You can spend it on pushing yourself, some things like that for rolls. So we want to be spending this. So having a bigger pool to spend is always good. If we get traumatized, that's good and bad. You pick one of these. They don't have a mechanical effect necessarily. So let's say we take unstable for our first trauma and we hover over unstable. Your emotional state is volatile. You can instantly rage, fall into despair, act impulsively, or freeze up. This counts as role-playing your trait. If you do something suboptimal and you act in a way that that character is unstable, you get your playbook XP for that, even if you didn't take a rigging action that time. So it's bad, but it's not the worst. And the same goes for blighted corruptions. But what's this grit ability? Well, we hover over it. When you use grit, you use the hard lessons taught to you over the course of your career and endure. Each adds +2 dice to a resistance roll before the roll 1 time per roll. So we can't spend multiple uses and get like 6 dice or something like that. Specialist actions, and that includes this one, are not rolled and are specific to your class. You have a number of uses per action equal to its rating. So we have grit. We've got 1 point in grit, meaning we get 1 use. If we had 3, we get 3 uses. And you see you can track your uses over here. We can use 2, and then this little red dot zeroes that out. But you start with 1 as a soldier. So if I'm making a resistance roll, I'm not real happy with it, or maybe I'm already really high stress and I want to take less stress, I can use my grit ability to add 2 dice to that resistance roll and resist more of the stress that comes my way. Now, soldiers, as you saw when I opened this, have a lot more options for abilities. G here stands for general. Everyone can take these. Soldiers can take these. Specialists can take these. Some of them have some special stuff to them. So if I look at, say, elite shoot here, You gain mastery of 2 actions. So I actually get to take 2 of these when I take elite something. And they can go up to rank 4. Remember, I said they usually cap out at rank 3. So I could say take elite shoot and elite scrounge and add those. And now my shoot goes up to 4 and my scrounge goes up to 4, or wherever that went. Oh, you shouldn't take elite scrounge. He doesn't have it. Sorry. Scrounge is for scouts. Elite skirmish. So we have elite shoot and elite skirmish. Now my 2 main combat abilities are up to a level 4. And as I, progress my prowess, I can add more boxes in there and now have my base number of dice for skirmish be rolling 4 dice, which can be really useful. So those are kind of your general ones. They're usually just a core mechanical upgrade. That's where we find hardened, which is extra stress. Survivor is extra trauma. So again, if we wanted that, automatically adds it in there. So now we can take more stress and more trauma. That lets you spend a lot more stuff. Trauma you cannot get rid of. Stress you can. Now, if you want to start finding a way to get rid of trauma, there's long-term projects and stuff we can work on in camp. Maybe you find an alchemical solution that wipes away some of their memories or something. But that's going to be a long-term project. That's not something that's in the base level of the game. But yeah, so you can see how adding these a lot of times just automatically puts it into your sheet, which is great. Speaking of healing things, healing stress usually happens at camp. But I'm going to pop open another rookie here because rookies have a special thing for that too. So grab another rookie, look at abilities. I thought this one was really neat. It's called home cooking. If we look at home cooking, if a mission takes multiple days, use your fresh food. So you get a special fresh food supply that only you get. You say what you cook. You cook them a home cooked meal. Everyone in the squad that partakes clears 1 stress. This ability cannot be taken as a veteran advance. Again, this is only for rookies. You keep that as you advance this character. You get to keep home cooking forever. And on every mission that takes multiple days, you can clear 1 stress from everyone. Now, if you've got a squad of 5 people, which is your standard. So the Ember Wolves have 5 members. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Leroy Jenkins got that in there extra for some reason. We'll figure that out someday. But you take a squad of 5 and then you have your 2 specialists that come along with it. So you can make a home cooked meal. And as far as the Legion is concerned, you've just cleared 7 stress from the team. So this can be a really impactful ability to just kind of have in your back pocket to use on missions that take multiple days. And maybe we specially send out the Ember Wolves on multi-day missions because 1 or 2 people have home cooking or something like that, which helps us deal with stress. So we can clear stress that way. We can clear stress through a camp action, some things like that. Corruption is similar. It needs to get drained off by like some religious reliquaries and things like that. And then harm is this healing tree right here. So your level 1 harm, when it says you can put a tick in your healing stuff, that's these. So we tick that. If we tick that, we clear all level 1 harm. This whole row here got filled. It's only 1 for level 1. And if say you were drained and you had a sprained ankle or something like that, you tick this box when you get your healing, you get to clear both of those and untick that box. And now your level 1s are healed. Obviously level 2s take 2 ticks, level 3s take 3 ticks. And that's why we have multiple squads. You have a couple people who are really injured. Maybe we send out a different squad that day. But then again, back to abilities here as you're leveling up your playbook. Soldiers have special ones here. Cavalry, eat iron shit nails is one. Grenadier, you get grenades to take along with you, so on and so forth. Now you can, instead of taking a soldier ability, you can advance this soldier to a specialist. Maybe you want to, maybe you don't want to. You're limited to 6 total abilities. I believe elite abilities count as 1 because you take both elite shoot and elite skirmish at the same time. I'm at least going to say they do. I think that's the way they intended it. So when you fill up your 6 abilities, you're done. There's no more ability advancements for your playbook. Now you're just advancing over here. There are supposed to be limits to this. I'm not going to put limits on this. They're like, you'll rarely hit them. And okay, then I'm not going to worry about it. But so if we take 2 or 3 of these, when we advance to a specialist, again, we keep those go along with us. Again, this hardened one is free since we brought that in as a rookie ability. So keep stuff like that in mind. There's a spot for some notes over here and we can pop that into our notes. Harden, whatever, hard equals rookie ability. So that way, if somebody's playing this later and they're trying to advance the abilities and they're like, oh, I'm full, they check the notes and they're like, oh, wait, no, we actually keep one for free there. So these are abilities that are special to soldiers. General is things that everyone can get. And if we advance them into a specialist, obviously the specialist is going to have their own unique abilities. Now you can see here that this is a heavy. Heavy doesn't have grit. Again, grit is specific to soldiers. Once you specialize, you're leaving being a soldier behind to do your new thing. I'll go through all the specialists later. Anchor is his ability. But you can see here we have heavy abilities, we have general abilities. The veteran advances we were talking about earlier are down here. If we level up our specialist thing down here, and we can do that as a soldier as well, you can take specialist abilities. So we have anchor in the heavy. If you're a medic or an officer or something else and you want the anchor ability, you can take it here. And we can, we have to click it though. Well, it's fighting me. It's not showing up. But, oh no, no. Oh, I can't take it. Ha 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 ha, because I'm a heavy. Let's say we want channels. There we go. So you can take an ability from another class. This counts towards your 6. So you're obviously giving up on taking one of your special heavy abilities, but you can diversify the character a little bit more, make them more useful in different situations and things by doing that as well. That's pretty much character advancement. You end at a specialist or at a soldier if you want him to be a career soldier, and you get up to 6 abilities, including your veteran advances over here. So that's really kind of it. Oh, I missed one thing. I'm sorry. So you see how this guy has 2 traits. You take 2 traits from your background. That's my bad. So you have Artisan, and then we have Shrewd, added 1D in Insight Resistance. So again, for Playbook XP, if I make an Insight Resistance or a Rig roll with this character at the end of the mission, I get a mark in XP, and that XP can go anywhere. So we've got resistance rolls, we've got healing, armor. If you are equipped with armor, which comes as a part of your loadout, which we'll cover next, you can tick that as a resistance. So you're taking a level 3 injury, we want to reduce it to level 2, and you brought some armor with you, you tick that. The armor is now damaged. It's not going to be combat effective for the rest of the mission until we get back to camp and repair it, but we get to reduce that for free. No stress, no roll, no anything. Can we combo that with a resistance roll? Absolutely. So we take those crushed ribs, we move them down to an internal injury, and then we're going to make our prowess resistance roll, and we can move that internal injury down to just, you got bashed. You got hit with a big hammer and it hurt. You can see armor, heavy armor gets 2 uses versus light armor. Shield gets a use, and then there's special armor. Special armor comes from different places. It can be from the chosen that's traveling with your camp, which we'll cover in a little bit. It can be from another class that gives you an ability to, so like this anchor ability lets the heavy fight as if he's a whole squad of people. Somebody else is going to have an ability that lets you tick special armor against undead sources of damage or something like that. So they use a use of that ability, you use a use of your special armor, and you get to use armor against that. It's kind of how that works. So where do we get this stuff? We get it from our loadout. So I'll go to this loadout first. This is a normal loadout for a heavy. So loadouts are different. We're going to get rid of our soldier here, and we're going to pop open a medic. So if I go to the loadout, we'll go normal loadout on both of them just to show some of the differences. And I get to go here and I get to take everything involved with a normal loadout. And I get to take everything involved with the light loadout, but I already have that in there. And then we'll cover utility next. So we're going to get rid of his utility items so that it all matches up. And then we'll take the full normal loadout for this lad here. So heavy versus medic. They're going to have 2 different loadouts. Loadout is the amount of equipment you're taking with you. If you want to be fast and stealthy and cover more ground, move unseen, you're going to want your team to have light loadouts. If you're going to just fight, face something head on, you're going to want them to have heavy loadouts. So the heavy, not to be confused with heavy loadout, but the heavy on this team gets, as a part of their light loadout, a fine hand weapon and a flare gun. So a fine hand weapon is a sword, spear, or axe. So you get a one-handed weapon and you get a flare gun. As a part of your normal loadout, you get a fine heavy weapon. Now here's where you got to pay attention. Take this or fine shield. So we got to pick between these two. Do we want a big 2-handed weapon that's going to do more damage, hurt more things, have a greater effect, or do we want a fine shield with us that's going to protect us better? Again, a fine item comes with an extra use. So this fine shield, we get to mark this shield box twice. So you'll have to kind of track that separately, as that one doesn't pop up automatically. But let's say we're going to go with a heavy weapon. Fitted heavy plate, we get heavy armor. So again, now we can click this heavy box. We get 2 uses out of our armor to resist physical damage. Fine shield, fine heavy weapon. I apparently already had that in there. Yeah, I doubled in. Okay. So that's the actual normal loadout for this guy. Fine hand weapon, flare gun, fine heavy weapon, fine heavy plate, fine heavy weapon. Why am I marking all this twice? Okay, let's do this one more time, just to be sure we've got it right. We're taking the heavy weapon and we're taking the heavy plate. Yes. So this is the normal heavy loadout. You can see it's geared towards weapons and armor. You can go for more defensive loadout and take the shield instead. But this is your thing. Now, utility items are a little bit different. And of course, they are marked with a U. These are things like you can take an extra shield. You can take an extra heavy weapon. You can take some oil to set stuff on fire. You can take reliquaries, which we're going to add just so I can show you what they are. You can take a wrecking kit, which we'll add because I'm sure some of you will have a good time with that. So what are these? A reliquary is bones of the ancient chosen in vials of sacred oil, shavings of relics, spend to reduce corruption taken by 1, and add 1 dice to resist it. A fine version of this item reduces corruption by 2. You can use it 3 times when you take it. So again, we talked about reducing corruption. This is the thing you would use to reduce corruption or to help someone resist it if you know they're about to just jump into a big fight or something like that. What's a wrecking kit? It's a mallet and spikes, a pry bar, axes, drills, vials of acid, and alchemical hand charges, so explosives. I mean, when you got to get into the room, sometimes you need the equipment to get in through the wall. So that's what a wrecking kit is, and it's a utility item that you can take. So moving over to the medic here and seeing how their stuff differs. At a light load, they get a fine medic kit, a holy symbol of mercy, which just identifies them. So if you're interacting with people, if there's humans out there that, you can maybe negotiate with, things like that, having this is going to identify you as someone who helps people. Tonics are pretty much something that boost your abilities. You might be trying to heal a wound, and I'd say you're going to have to spend a use of tonics to get that done, and so on and so forth. You get, for a normal load, you get ammo, you get a pistol, you get armor, and you get extra tonics. So you can then go pick your 2 utility items if you want them. So say this guy is going to bring a reliquary as well. Now, if you'll notice, I picked 1 utility item and it says 2 out of 2 utility. And over here I've picked 2 and it says 3 out of 2. It's because reliquaries count for double. So when you take some of these are really, really good items, and they're going to count for 2 utility items. So you're going to want to negotiate a little bit beforehand on who's bringing what do we need to make sure we're covering. So this guy, he can't take the wrecking kit and the reliquaries, but maybe we need 2 people with him because we're expecting to hit a lot of corruption this mission. And that's kind of how your loadout works. You don't all have to take the same loadout. So maybe we want the heavy to take a heavy loadout. And we go in and we find our H's. He gets a fine tower shield and a fine wrecking kit. So, hey, we get that wrecking kit anyways. And again, that fine wrecking kit means he gets extra charges of it. The fine tower shield replaces a shield, and it's a massive shield that can be used to protect others. So he can now get in front of other people and help protect them with that. Now, it says it replaces a shield, which means we had to take a shield earlier. Okay, so we don't get the heavy weapon. We go back to our normal load and we take the fine shield instead. And so this tower shield replaces that. So we don't get an extra use of shield, but we get one that can defend other people, and it grants an armor to us in terms of resisting things. So that's kind of how loadout works. That's all decided before the mission when we're deciding who's taking what character and what are we taking with us and things like that. You do not have to equip every single rookie on the mission. You will decide that as you take on one of those rookies because the other rookie you were taking care of, met an untimely end or something like that. But say you're the one who is taking a soldier, again, loadout. We're going to take ourselves a normal loadout, and the soldier has his own. He gets a lot of stuff in his light loadout. He gets fine armor, a climbing kit, a cooking kit, a hand weapon, a medic kit, a repair kit, all these kinds of... So a soldier gets a lot more stuff than a specialist does, but it's not always as good, and it's not always as tuned to his role. So he can take a fine heavy weapon or a fine shield. He can also take an extra 2 utility items. So again, there are some good reasons to leave a soldier and not upgrade them to a specialist. So We're going to exit out of all this. And that's pretty much your core dice mechanics and the core way in which these people are played. So what goes beyond that? What makes this an army Legion running game versus just a let's go out and do missions game? Well, that's your party roles. And I have all those here. I'm not going to go through every single one of them because Lore Master and Spy Master are optional, but I'll go through the three main ones. So one, this is what I'm considering to be your personal player. You're going to play this every single session. You're going to be this person every mission. I'm kind of equating this system to XCOM a little bit, where you play as the commander, but then you still run the soldiers when they go out on missions. And that's kind of the vibe we get here. So they also get a heritage, reputation, personality, and their look. These are just for you to kind of flesh out your character. And you can kind of decide who they are, what they're like. Maybe, well, they're scarred. Why are they scarred? What happened? And you can kind of, this is just guidance for character creation. You can do whatever you want with this. This is your character sheet essentially for them. And it gives you what you're supposed to do. So what does the commander do? They track time and pressure. So pressure and time increase when time passes or for certain mission penalties. So you go on a mission, you fail, there's specific penalties you take for that. Pressure decreases from some missions, like if you succeed, and advancing it resets to 0. So advancing from, say, moving from Plainsworth, and we're going to take the long road, we reset all the pressure. Pressure is you've stayed in this area for a long time, and the enemy army is catching up to you. How difficult is it going to be for you to extricate yourself from this place and get to the next one? Time is time. Yeah, that makes sense. So track location and movement. You decide when the Legion advances. So the final call of when we move from one area to another is on the commander. You may never backtrack. That's not a commander specific thing. We can just never go back. The enemy is behind us. If we go back, we die. We have to advance at all costs. Mark the Legion position and route on your map. That's this little guy here. When you advance, roll pressure minus horse uses spent and add time based on the roll. So he's tracking pressure, which there's spots for you to track this over here. So pressure minus horse uses spent. So the quartermaster, a different role, can spend horses. So if we've got 3 uses of horses to spend and we've got 3 pressure, you don't have to roll. No time passes. We make it out easy peasy and get on to the next place. Spending more time in a location is beneficial because you get to roll more missions. The more missions you roll, the more stuff you can get, the more you can progress characters, things like that. But staying for too long can become a problem. So when you advance, we take the pressure minus the amount of horses we spend, and you roll that many dice. And like everything else, you're rolling a pool of d6s and taking the highest. If it's 1 to 3, we add 1 time to the clock. If it's 4 or 5, we add 2 time to the clock. If it's a 6, we add 3 to the clock. And if it's 2 6s, we add 5 to the clock. The clocks are over here in these resources. So if we rolled for 3, we add 3 time to this clock. When we get this one full, summer ends and the South falls. Well, the South really isn't our concern. We continue going on. Panya burns. Panya is, I believe, this city down here. Again, not really our problem, but just kind of setting stuff for the scene. So these clocks advance. If we get all the way to the end here and we advance all of the clocks and we haven't reached Skydagger Keep, unfortunately, the enemy army has overrun us. So there is a reason we want these to stay unfilled. Also, as these clocks advance, every time one fills up, there is specific enemy captains chasing you, and they get a new ability and get a little bit stronger. So that's something to track. And here's where you track your pressure here. How long have we stayed in an area? How much pressure have we gained in this space? Horses are tracked on the quartermaster sheet, obviously. And then you just, continue tracking these things. So if somebody asks you how much time do we have left, it's like, well, we have 4 left in summer. Or fall, rather, I guess. This one would be fall. This would be summer, fall, something. I don't know. You'll figure it out. And then you're also tracking intel. Well, what's intel? Track and spend intel. Spend intel to add 1 dice to mission engagement rolls. A mission engagement roll is when you go out on a mission, we decide how that mission starts. So that'd be this roll right here that I have. It's called a fortune roll. The marshal will be making this roll for us, and he's got a special spot for it on his sheet. We'll say it was 4 dice, and you spent an intel to give us 5 dice. So we roll, and it will tell us here We got a 6. So you get a good result or a full effect. Fortune rolls are kind of for a lot of things. If this is an engagement roll, you start in a controlled position. So you guys get to where you're going. The first obstacle you're going to face is insight. You're in a controlled position from which you can encounter that obstacle. So it gives you a better starting position for the mission. So you've got to go blow up a bridge. Controlled position, you guys make it to the bridge. There are enemies on it, obviously, but they're on the far side of the bridge. You have a clear path to get there without being spotted, that kind of a thing. That's a controlled position. If we roll a desperate position, you've been spotted. They're after you. They're almost on top of you. You find yourself 100 yards away from the bridge, but there was advanced forces that you didn't account for, that kind of thing. And that'll be the marshal's job to make that roll. But the commander can spend intel to give you an extra dice and a better chance at getting a good shot on that. So if we didn't roll that 6 and it was a 1, 2, or a 3, this was a pretty rough roll, but that commander intel would have at least given us a 5. We would have started from a risky position, but not a desperate one. Also, you get to, as you have intel, and you'll see it gets rid of them here. If we have 0 intel, you get to ask me one question about the mission. The 0 intel questions are the most general. What would be a useful item to bring? What are 2 approaches we could use here? How does our chosen feel about this mission? Chosen is a character that travels along with you, but you don't play directly. Which squads distrust or don't respect the leadership? That can matter to the engagement role. So you can ask some of these. As you gather intel from different missions, taking a recon mission is a great way to get intel. You get access to more questions, and you get to ask one from every list you have available to you. So at this point, we can ask 3. It's kind of how intel works. The commander chooses the mission. So you decide on a type of mission to focus on. So that increases the likelihood that one of these missions will pop up. It doesn't guarantee it, but say we really need supplies. You can say we're going to focus on a supply mission. So that way you can increase the likelihood that a supply mission will appear when we roll for missions in that area. You tell me, and then I roll the missions and tell you what's available. You pick 2 missions to perform. One is primary. That's the one you play through with your soldiers. We're going to choose the Ember Wolves, and we're going to bring a medic, a heavy, and a sniper, because medics get to attach to a unit for free. That's one of their special things. So you get to bring along 3 specialists this time, because we're sending one as a medic. And we're going to play through that mission. So that's the one that gets played out at the table. The other secondary and resolved with an engagement roll. So we literally just make this roll, and that determines what happened on that mission. The third one, you automatically fail. So that's the only problem with rolling additional missions, is you will always take a penalty for one of the missions to fail. This is there to represent the enemy can do more than you. We're not fighting from a position of advantage here. We're running away. We, the collective we before the game started, failed to stop the bad guys, and we're just trying to get to Skydagger Keep. So they can do more things than we can do. So one of the missions rolled will always be a failure. One of them will always be resolved with an engagement roll, and one of them you guys will play out. And the commander chooses which 2 of those we're going after. So it's perfectly okay to choose the missions based on, hey, this one has no penalty for failure. We're going to let that one be the automatic failure, because those do pop up from time to time. So it's not always, a negative thing to have one of those, because we can slot that in there. But maybe it's the type of mission you really needed. Maybe you really needed an assault mission because morale is low and we need to add some morale to the party. So we're going to take that mission, even though there's no consequence for failing it, because we need the reward. And these are the kind of things that the commander has to decide. Now, of course, consult with the table, talk to each other about it. They just kind of get the tie-breaking vote and get to decide for themselves. And there might be a reason. Maybe it's because they're devious. Maybe it's because they're cold. Maybe it's because of something that happened on a previous mission. So role play that out as to why you're going to be choosing those missions, but it is perfectly okay to choose for mechanical benefits. And on every single one of the roles, they have this: work with other roles, consult with the rest of the players to make the best decisions you can, but you have final say in the duties you're tasked with. Duties are choosing missions, tracking time, tracking pressure, and spending intel. Again, you've got a notes page if there's anything you want to keep track of. Effects isn't really anything you need for this, but if there's some special effect you want to make sure you remember, you can add it here. And items, again, these guys don't really carry items, but if there's items for the Legion that you want to make sure you remember because they influence, say, intel or something like that, you're welcome to keep notes of them here if you don't want them on your notes page. So really for the role, there's 2 pages you need to track: your duties and your resources. So for this one, we'll be starting with 0 intel, 0 pressure, and 0 time. So this is how it will look kind of when we start, and then you choose what you want this commander to look like. So we've talked a little bit about the quartermaster. Let's check them next. Quartermaster is the most complicated. I'm just going to tell you that up front. It's got the most things to track. It's got the most things to do. But it looks like it only has a couple of duties here, and that's because it does. You track and spend supply. You gain supply primarily from supply rewards and missions. You spend it for additional campaign actions, so you get specific actions that you can take. If you really need to take another one, maybe people really need to heal, you can spend a supply and take an extra quartermaster action so that people can heal more. So you're also in charge of healing because that's in your actions. Or you can boost a campaign action. So all of these actions have a boosted supply. So you can upgrade the result by 1 level for acquiring assets or something like that. Or Legionnaires clear all stress instead of clearing 3 stress, things like that. So you can spend it to take an extra action. You can spend it to boost an action. And when the commander advances the Legion, lose any supply you can't take with you. So you can overcap on supply when you're in place. But how much can we take with us? We can take 3 plus 1 per supply cart we have. And that's how much we get to take with us to the next space. So if we generate a bunch of supply and we have 6, but we only have 1 supply cart, we get to take 4 with us. So it might be worth it if the commander's saying, hey, I think we're moving out after this mission, spending that extra supply on your actions and things beforehand. So you're tracking and using supply. That's here. You got a supply counter. Ignore all this for a second. Track and use material and non-Legion personnel. That's what I was telling you to ignore. You expend material to make missions more successful. You track mercy and alchemist statuses. We'll talk about what those are, such as wounds and corruption. And then you work on projects to change the position of the Legion. So what does that mean? Well, we have special materials. Food stores. They are what they sound like. They're food. You have to feed the soldiers. If you don't feed the soldiers, they lose morale. Black shot. This is special, like 1-shot kill ammunition for most undead. There's religious supplies. There's horses of courses. There's siege weapons, supply carts. And if there's a unique thing that we come up that you guys find that we want to track separately, you can add another resource here and change what it is. But to start, it will be much simpler because you won't be tracking very much. I imagine you have food. But so you're tracking the uses of that, talking to people about it. Hey guys, food stores are low. We need to go on a supply mission, that kind of thing. Horses, again, these are the uses that you're tracking for advancing from one place to another to alleviate the roll for pressure. Supply carts are just the ability to take on extra supplies as we move, things like that. Black shot you can give to a mission beforehand, and everyone gets to take a use of black shot. So what are non-Legion personnel? Well, non-Legion personnel are mercies, alchemists, and laborers. There are 3 kinds. A mercy is a person who has the ability to take wounds on from someone else. So say we really want to send out the specialist next mission, but both of his level 1 harms are already filled. So if he takes another level 1 harm, it automatically gets put up to level 2. This mercy, we can tick up to wounded, and he can take one of those wounds onto himself. When we take a healing action at camp, no, those are projects. When we take on, I believe it's rest and recuperation. Yeah. So taking on rest and recuperation, everybody gets to mark a healing row, a tick in a healing row. And if you have a mercy that you've wounded, they can take on an extra tick, and any mercies who are already wounded get to remove one of those ticks. So when we take that healing action, they're now prepared to take on another wound. So that's kind of how mercies work. They take some of the heat off of the soldiers onto themselves, and they recover as the Legion recovers. Alchemists are scientists who can make alchemical brews and cure mystical diseases. So these are the guys who can kind of do magic. Magic is not big in this setting, which it kind of will be later based on kind of what's going on, but this is kind of the point on this continent where the bad guys have taken magic out of everything to hoard it for themselves, kind of like we were talking about, which is another one of the reasons I kind of liked this for our playthrough. Alchemists can still do some of that through alchemical means, but they get corrupted as they do it. So as they take on these projects, as they do these things that are beyond what a normal human can do, they become corrupted. If they ever become fully corrupted, they turn into an undead, and we have to kill them and go get a new alchemist. But the quartermaster is free to spread out the corruption among as many alchemists as they have. So just reading you the description for these guys here: bound to the maker or builder, which are gods. Alchemists are scientists who can transmute materials. With a god broken, alchemy now corrupts. So one of the gods got turned into a bad guy by the bad guys. Mechanics: alchemists can make alchemicals and cure mystic diseases. If the GM says if this is an acquire asset or an alchemical long-term project, roll dice equal to the number of alchemists you have for the effect, then roll alchemist dice for corruption. Higher you roll, the less. If you crit, no corruption, which would be great. You get the effect with nothing. Distribute corruption among alchemist clocks. When full, alchemist is blighted and ended. Dangerous projects may add +1 or +2 to the corruption roll. So that kind of just depends on what you're working on. And this is where you can get creative, about, we're going to create a project that gets rid of trauma. Well, that might be a little extra dangerous because you're screwing with people's memories. Or we're going to find a way to upgrade oil to some kind of alchemist fire and things like that. And so those are the projects they undertake. Laborers are free labor. They get to tick a clock without having to make any rolls or anything like that. Clocks are the projects over here. So they can be anywhere from 12 task to 4 task clocks. You assign a specialist to attach to the project, and they're the one who rolls for that project. So the quartermaster is in charge of who's working on the projects, how many rolls are getting done, and things like that. But if we have laborers, we don't have to do that. So you can do this as a campaign action multiple times. So the quartermaster gets a set number of campaign actions based on morale that he can spend on advancing these projects. But if we have a laborer and we say we're attaching a laborer to this project, and they would make a note of it here, it ticks every single time, no matter what. So that's what laborers are good for. And these can be anything from researching something, building a siege weapon, sending people out to recon for troop locations. Your imagination is kind of your limit on what a long-term project is. And then again, these are your actions, and you see the long-term project action here. I'm not going to go too far into these, but acquiring assets and supplies, clearing stress, working on long-term projects, recruiting soldiers. You can gain up to 5 rookies with this action. And clearing stress are kind of what these amount to. And again, those can be boosted if we mark off a tick of supply. So that is your quartermaster. Again, he's pretty complicated. Last main duty is the marshal. Marshal's a bit simpler there. They track morale, which is here. We have a morale tracker. You can spend it down or spend it up as things happen. You assign who goes on and leads missions. So the commander chooses what mission. We're going to do an assault mission. So the marshal goes through and he goes to our specialists, and we say, okay, we're going to do an assault mission. So I want to assign the ones that are good at assault missions. And it tells you right here. And this automatically updates for you. You do not have to track this. This comes straight over from the character sheet. So that medic we were messing around with earlier, he has 1 level 1 wound and a level 3 wound. The black ones are when that wound track has been completely filled. For level 3, there's only 1 space for it, so it's automatically full. They have 1 trauma, they have 2 stress, they have no blight. So this gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on with each person. When we go to the squads, it's the same thing. So we're messing with Leroy Jenkins. He has 2 wounds. He has 1 trauma. He has 3 stress. And we know that the Ember Wolves are made up of 3 rookies and 2 soldiers. So this gives you a rundown of all those guys so that you're not flicking through all the sheets. You're not sitting there every time something, I got to mark a stress on this. This is all ported in automatically for you. So you can just get a quick snapshot of it. So you're assigning what squad and what specialists go on the mission. In general, it's 1 squad and 2 specialists. Medics are free. They can attach additionally, so you can take 3 specialists. Some missions every once in a while let you take 3 specialists anyways. So if you want to attach a medic to one of those, you can take up to 4, but that's going to be rare. Generally, 1 squad, 2 specialists. And it says here, missions take 1 squad, 2 specialists. If there's an officer on the mission, they're in charge. An officer is a type of specialist. Otherwise, you say who's in charge. So who is running lead on this mission? Who gets final say over the strategy while we're out there? Who's in charge of making sure the rookies are doing their jobs? That kind of thing. You get to assign a leader. Unless there's an officer, they're automatically in charge. And you track the squads and specialists. This is not really for you. This is for if you're playing pen and paper. Between missions, keep the playbooks, mark losses, harm, stress, advancement, and promotions. Name squad members as needed. I'm going to say whoever plays the squad member for the first time gets to name them. and detail any specialists the Legion gains. That I will probably still leave to you. If we recruit a specialist outright, you're going to be the one to kind of flesh out that character sheet. You add the extra 4 points, you choose their traits, things like that. And you ensure Legionnaires advance. So this is just you tracking XP with everyone, making reminders if somebody thinks, oh, I didn't do this. You've maybe made a note or a mental note that says, oh no, when we were, breaching that door, you went in first as a rookie and we knew there were a bunch of enemies inside, and that counts as you going up against, scary odds, or however that was worded. You can get your mission XP. Secondary missions that we send people on automatically grant 2 XP to all specialists regardless of outcome. So they get their 1 for surviving, but we don't know whether or not they fulfilled those other 2 roles. Specialists always get an extra 2 XP for being attached to a secondary mission. And then again, consult with other people. So what are the resources here? Morale. How do we gain morale? From successful missions and whenever the quartermaster chooses the Liberty campaign action. That's the stress relieving one. When we relieve stress, morale increases. That makes sense. Lose morale. Penalties for missions failures. Okay, some missions will come with a morale cost. From when you can't pay supply or food. So there are times where you have to pay supply or have to pay food for something. If you don't have food to feed people or don't have supplies to do what you need to do, that loses morale. Or whenever a soldier dies, we lose 1 morale. We're not working with a ton of morale here. So this is something that we're going to have to baby a little bit, because this also determines whether or not the quartermaster gets to take a certain number of campaign actions. And so you can see those split up into red, yellow, and black here. If we're in the black, I believe the way it works, and I'll look this up one more time, they get to take 2 campaign actions. If they're in the yellow, they get to take 1 campaign action. And if they're in the red, they can't take a campaign action without spending supply. It may be 1, 2, 3. I'll have to double check that. If you lose morale and have none, if we're down here and morale's empty and we can't feed people, so we lose 2 morale, instead of going into debt, soldiers start deserting. 1 per morale you can't pay. So we start with rookies, then soldiers. If we get to the point where we have fewer than 3 squads, end the game, the Legion is no more. If we get to that point, I'm actually going to shift your final mission. You guys are going to be carrying a special relic with you to get to Skydagger Keep that's going to keep the undead and the influence of the undead at bay and create kind of a base of operations for a resistance. If we get down to the point where we're running out of people, we're out of morale, things like that, your mission is going to shift to finding a place to secret that away, keep it away from the undead, and find a way where, some party of adventurers in the future maybe can come find it and use it for their benefit. I don't know who they'd be, but maybe we'll find out. So we won't just randomly end the game there. We will continue on with a separate mission that's a little more desperate. We know the Legion's not going to make it, but how can we gain some advantages and things for our upcoming characters? Engagement roles. Excuse me. Engagement roles, this is the thing that the Marshal is in charge of. And this is not a number of engagements. This is just a tracker for you to count all these things. So that is the role we made here of how many dice do we get for our engagement role. Legion loyalty are all on the mission oath sworn to the Legion. There's some mechanics for that we don't need to get into right now. But if there's nobody who's disloyal, you take a dice. Did the commander spend an intel to give you foresight and info? So if you spend an intel to get that extra dice, they track it here. Veteran, is everyone on the mission a specialist or soldier? Basically, are we free from the weight of rookies? We can take an extra dice. Leadership, does anyone distrust leadership or not fear them enough to obey orders on the battlefield? That will probably be a morale-based issue that we can kind of role play out, that can come in the form of failures that happen on the mission, a mission that previously took a bunch of casualties in a squad, and there's somebody there that is disloyal, and we're working out through role play at the camp, regaining their loyalty, things like that. Then you would take 1 less dice, and our required specialists or equipment not on the mission. So if there is a mission that requires, hey, you need to bring a wrecking kit and we don't have it, well, then the engagement score goes down by 1. So you track all that here, and then there's specifics. If it's an assault mission, did the quartermaster equip the soldiers with Blackshot? You get an extra engagement roll die. Is any legionnaire starting the mission wounded? You lose an engagement roll die. And there's specials for recon missions, religious missions, and supply missions. And from that, we know we get 3. So we come over here, 3 dice, and we roll the engagement roll for the mission, or rather the Marshal rolls that roll, and we look, and hey, we got another 6. We start from a really good spot with a good engagement into that. And then that's kind of the marshal's job. He tracks the morale, makes the engagement rolls, chooses what squad goes, and chooses what specialists are assigned. Again, you've got spot for notes if there's anything. If you know that, like, hey, within the Ghost Owls, there's, this guy, Gregory Abernathy, is disloyal to the Legion because his friend died, and the specialist didn't save him or something like that. And you can make a note of that here. And then again, effects and items if there's anything special you want to track, but I doubt you'll be using these two tabs that much. And that is kind of the game. That's basically everything. I know that's a lot. I'm looking at the timer here. It's been about an hour. Some of that you may have already known in terms of dice mechanics and things like that. One thing I think I said I was going to cover but didn't, and it's real simple. We'll grab our medic. Is when you're making a roll. So say we're making a research roll, you can push yourself. I talked a little bit about it. You're spending 2 stress to get an additional dice or to get an increased effect. You can push yourself multiple times to get both, but I think I didn't cover really the stress cost here. And there are some abilities and things you can take that reduce that or change that, and different stuff for different specialists, different people. Group actions. Devil's Bargain is, you kind of know what it is. The only difference is within the main system, there's always a consequence for it. So if I say you're taking on a Devil's Bargain, it's yes, you can get an extra dice, but you're guaranteed to take a wound from this regardless of success. Or you get an extra dice, but you're going to make your next roll in this fight from a desperate position, or something like that. The consequence is guaranteed, but you get an extra dice. And you can refuse those. If you ask for a Devil's Bargain and you don't like it, you're allowed to say, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to push myself instead, or something like that. Group action. Everyone can make an action roll and count the single best result. So say we're stealthing and we're trying to sneak past the enemy. This is something we run into in like D&D or Cypher System all the time. There's a rogue who's really good at sneaking, and there's a paladin who's really not. There's a mechanic for this. Everybody involved makes an action roll and counts the single best result. So if one person crits, everyone benefits from the crit. If the best result is a full success, everyone gets a full success. But for every person that fails the roll, so for everyone whose highest roll is a 1 through 3, the leader of that roll, in this case the rogue who's really good at sneaking, takes an extra stress for that failure. If nobody fails, if everyone's rolling 4, 5s, and 6s as their top result, there's no stress involved for this. But if somebody's highest result is a 1, 2, or 3, the leader of that roll has to put in extra effort to teach that paladin not to smash into the boxes on their way through, or to run back and quiet their armor because they hear that it's too loud or something like that. But that's how you can sneak somebody who's not very sneaky past a group of people and some things like that. So they take a little bit of extra stress for that. I believe officers have a special ability to not take stress, and so they can lead group actions more effectively. A setup action is something you do before someone is taking an action, obviously. So you're setting them up for success. If this action roll succeeds and it makes sense in the fiction, give an improved position or +1 effect to the next PC's action roll. So I'm going to throw a net at this enemy to lock them down so that the sniper can get a better shot off at them. Or I'm going to, whatever, do something that creates a setup for someone else's action. Obviously, unless there's something really crazy going on, your failures for a setup action are going to be very limited and probably result in time passing or enemies closing in or something like that, more so than wounds, unless you're, building a bridge over lava or something wild. And it gives improved position and effect to the next person who can mark that as they're making their roll. That was one thing I remembered I needed to come back to. Beyond that, I will cover pretty much everything else in game. Like I said, you guys are essentially trying to make your way across this map and get to Skydagger Keep. When you get there, there is an end game setup where, based on how well you've performed so far, there's a final roll. They give you a score. For us, it's going to be more of what was the influence of this Legion's actions on our upcoming campaign, and what can you guys expect to find when you make it to this area in the map, because you guys will be coming from the south. And that is really all I'm going to cover here. There are additional things. There's a lore master who's in charge of, writing stories and keeping tales, and he helps minimize the morale loss from dead soldiers. And there's a spy master who kind of assists in gathering intel, sending spies on missions, getting extra things and stuff like that. But I'll only really go through those if one of you guys pick those. Each of you will have a role. And then From there, we juggle all the different squads and specialists as we see fit. So that is kind of up to you guys. If you have a particular specialist or maybe a particular rookie that you've grown attached to and you want to keep playing them, you guys can just kind of call that as we go into a mission. And we will go from there. That is what I got for you. Hit me up on Discord if you have any questions before Sunday. If you don't make it all the way to this point in the video, you won't know this, but that is okay. It is very long and it's going to take you a lot of time to get through. I hope everything was clear. Hit me up if it wasn't. And beyond that, I will see you guys on Sunday. Take care.